that the members are supposed to have. So what it means is that the council has to treat all members fairly and equally as part of that fiduciary duty. A council cannot tell a member, I'm going to treat you one way, and I'm going to treat the other member another way. So that's the most important component of that duty of the council towards the membership. Now, you may come up with a whole bunch of examples of, hey, have I been treated fairly and equally in that case, in that case, in that case? I don't have all the answers on very particular cases or facts, but I'm just explaining to you the duty itself. The members are members, and those who are entitled to be members. So it means that there are some individuals who are not yet members, but could be members. And the duty of the council of fiduciary duty towards the members also include those who are entitled to be members. So we have a list of people we know are members, and there's a list of people who are claiming to be members, and we don't know if they are or not at this time. And I'll further explain why. So that's why the council has to be very cautious, because we have a list of members, and then there's a list of people who applied to be members, and we just don't know if they are or not at this stage, and there's going to be a process to decide if they are members or not. Okay? So, right now, there's a situation where the council has to deal, in Thessalon, has to deal with two different lists. There's a list coming from Indigenous Service Canada, also known as Indian Affairs. And there's a list of members from your own membership code that you have. We can change the slide. Under the Indian Act, there's only two possibilities regarding membership. You're either a Section 10 list, which is the list that is controlled by the membership and by the council. We call it Section 10, which is the case of Thessalon. And then there's Section 11, which is the list controlled by Indian Affairs. Initially, everybody starts with Section 11. When the Indian Act was enacted, everybody was under the control of Indian Affairs. Nobody had their own membership list. And under Section 10, there's a two-step process to transfer the list from Indian Affairs and take control by the community. It implies two referenda by the members. The first referendum is to accept the fact that the community wants to take control of its membership. There's a first referendum for that, just on the principle. We don't know who's going to be the members, we don't know what's going to be the process, the appeal, who's going to treat the application. We have no information yet. Just on the principle to have a list from Section 11 to Section 10. It takes a first referendum. So obviously that was done for Thessalon back in around 1988. Then there's a second referendum where the people have to decide on the membership code, which is your law of membership. You have your election law, you have your membership law. So there's a second referendum on that. Once that second referendum is done, you go from a Section 11 list to a Section 10 list, and you completely control your membership. It's important to mention that the two lists don't coexist. There's no hybrid situation. You cannot go from one list to the other. There's only one list for Thessalon, and it's the Section 10 list, the one that's called Thessalon membership code. That's the only one that's relevant. And why is it relevant? It's because the duty of the council are to the members. The members. Not simply because you have a status card from Indian Affairs and you turn the card and you look, it says Thessalon Reserve. That's not enough. This is only your registration as an Indian, which is a completely different process. That's Section 6 of the Indian Act. So the fact that you have a status card does not grant you membership of Thessalon. It only says that you are registered as an Indian under the Indian Act. Even if it mentions Thessalon First Nation, because when you register as an Indian, you have to choose a reserve where you're going to belong. So whenever you do your registration, let's say you register your child, maybe you're thinking, hey, I registered my child as Thessalon, so my child will be a member. No. All you're doing is giving your child a status card to become an Indian under Section 6 of the Indian Act. Has nothing to do with the membership. As a matter of fact, I even have clients who have, like you, a Section 10 membership code. They accept members who will not even be granted a status card because they don't qualify under Section 6 to get a status card. And I'm not going to go into the details on how and why. It's very complicated. But you have First Nation people, treaty like non-treaty, member of a community, no status card. And you know how it gets complicated? ISK, Indian Affairs, when they provide funding for First Nations, they calculate per capita for the programs, education, health, social services, infrastructure, all the services that you get on a reserve is based on how many Indians are registered under your community. Whether or not you have your own code is not relevant. They count the Indians. So if you have a membership code where only 80% of the members are Indians, it means that 20% are not Indians, will not be entitled to any service by ISK or Health Canada because they don't qualify as Indians. But because of the duty, the fiduciary duty to treat all your members equally and fairly, the Band Council has to figure out a way to provide the same services to those 20% who are not Indians, because ISK is not going to pay for them. The Band Council has to figure out a way to pay for them, because they have to be treated equally. You cannot discriminate between, hey, you're not an Indian and you're an Indian. What matters is, are you a member? Yes or no? In your situation, the way that the code is designed, and I'm not going to go very far because Michael, after me, will present the issues regarding your membership code, so I'm not going to go into the details. But more or less, the way that your code was designed would make it very difficult for a non-Indian to be a member of Thessalon. It's very restrictive. So you don't have this type of membership code that others that were more permissive, for instance, saying, if one of the parent is a member, the child can be a member. If a code says that, well, eventually you're going to fall out of line with Section 6 of the Indian Act, as you know, because if you're a 6'2", and your spouse is not Indian, most likely the child will lose status. But under a code where it says one of the two parents is a member, the child can be a member, there you go. The child becomes a member, not an Indian. So it doesn't take very long that you have a significant amount of people who don't qualify as Indians, but would keep on being members of the list. So those are the consequences. But that's not your case. Yes?
Sorry, there's no sound on Zoom.
There's no sound on Zoom. It's intermittent on Zoom, and I know our internet speed here is very poor. So normally it's quite good, but for whatever reason tonight, I'm running tests and our internet is very slow in the room. So there's only so much signal we can put out, and that would be something that could happen. because their audio could cut in and out. So we can't fix it. It comes from the source. I do apologize.
Would it be better if we cut the camera and we just leave the sound?
It could be.
Because it's a lot more interesting to hear me than to see me. So, going into your code, Section 10 since 1988. So you had a Section 10. It started with, usually when it goes from Section 11 to Section 10, ISC will ask one thing. Whoever was your member when we control the list, they have the right to become members when we transfer the list from ISC to the bank. That way, there's not a process to eliminate people who were initially on the list. So it's like a grandfather clause, that if you were on the ISC list, you will be automatically a member of the new membership code. So it starts with whoever was a member of the ISC list in 1988 automatically became a member of Thessalon with the Section 10 code. From there, it's the new process that kicks in. Application, you apply for membership, eventually you get a letter or some communication confirming that you are a member of the community. Remember, this doesn't grant you a status card. That's another thing. So for those who only apply for a status card, doesn't mean that you became a member of the community. And that's what happened over time. In 1999, the membership code was amended, and for some reason, the process of membership was put on the back burner and completely abandoned for many, many, many years up to today. So this is the source of the issue right now. There is an ISC list, which is the total of people who are Indians identifying themselves as Thessalon Indian Register. We call it the ISC list. The ISC list is around 1,200 people, more or less. 1,118. There might have been a few more births since, so let's say 1,130 or something. 13 something, okay. Who are still alive on the ISC list. We know that there's 1,100 and something people, Indians, who identify themselves as part of the Thessalon band. On the other side of the ring, we have the membership code with about 140 members, right? 140 members who are actually members. So right now, legally, the band has fiduciary duty towards the 140 registered member under the membership code. But don't forget, those who are entitled, which also are part of the definition. We just don't know who they are yet. So the process now is to take those 1,100 and something ISC list Indians who identify themselves as Thessalon and to put them into the other list and see if they qualify as members. Because believe it or not, because your code is more restrictive than Section 6 Indian Act, it doesn't mean that because you have a status card saying Thessalon on it, that you will qualify to be a member of the community, because there are different criteria. And that's the harsh reality. So there's a process in place where those of you who are online and can't hear me, who have a status card, have been asked to register. And there's a process, and Michael is going to talk to you about this whole process and how it's going to be treated. Okay, next slide. Please. Yeah.
Just on this last point, there's no loophole here to get added, given membership status in the First Nation. There's some cases that say the only way is to qualify under the membership code. So there's no, oh, I was able to vote in this election, or oh, I was able to do this for so many years. If you don't qualify under the code, there's no loophole, is what the courts have said. I just want to add that.
Yeah, and this is a very important information because, believe it or not, your election code refers to members on those who qualify to run for chief and council or even to vote. It doesn't say if you have a status card you can vote. It says if you're a member you can vote or run for chief and council. So there's a whole bunch of consequences if you think about it, because you could look at the list and say, hey, hold on. Some of the people in the council are not on the membership list. And I'm saying that, I didn't check, okay, so don't worry. But technically, that's what it could mean. And even those who have voted, because when you look at the number of voters, it's always above 140 people. So there's a whole bunch of people who voted who were not supposed to vote. So it brings legal issues because you could contest elections and say, oh, we allow people from voting who shouldn't have voted. So that right away could be a judicial review to the court and say we're canceling decisions, we're canceling elections. But the issue is there's been time, decades, during which we didn't fill the applications and we didn't update the membership list. And so that's the reality. So you have the two lists here. The ISK list, as I explained, section 6, it's a list of those who have status, and they used to determine the population of the 21 First Nations under the CDA. So let's talk about that. I think, yeah, there's a slide on that, so we'll get to it. The membership list is determined by the code. It's the list of the members of Thessalon. And technically, you don't necessarily have to be on the ISK list to be a member. And I'm going to give you an example of a situation that I had to deal with, not regarding a Thessalon member, but another First Nation. There's a lady who comes to see me and say, I lost my status card. I'm not entitled to my status card, but I'm 100% First Nation. And I said, how can that be? Well, she said, my mother, when she had me, she had an affair, so she didn't declare my dad on the birth certificate. So when the birth certificate made it to ISK, because the father was not identified, they put father unknown, not an Indian. So the mother was 6'1", no father. The child is 6'2". Believe it or not, the same thing happened to a generation before, to her grandmother. No father declared. So the mother was declared 6'2", and now the lady who came to see me has no status, even though the grandfather and the father were part of that band, and they had status card, but simply because it was not declared on the birth certificate. So what we had to do, we had to go to court, had the grandfather recognize paternity, and the father recognize, and then she got granted a 6'1" status card. But you see, that person qualified as a member because she could tell that both parents were part of that band in 2 generations. So she was fully entitled to be part of the membership list without an Indian status. So it can happen. And there's plenty of other examples I could give you. Does the council owe a duty to the ISK list? The answer is no, but under the ISK list, maybe there are eligible members that are not yet confirmed. So we cannot say right away, we're not taking care of you, you don't belong to our membership list, we just don't know. All we can tell you is apply, and we'll see if you qualify. There's a process. And don't forget, under that process, and I'm not going to go into the detail, Michael will, but whoever gets refused under the process can always go to an appeal and then a judicial review if they don't agree with the decision that was taken by council or by the people in charge of the process. Because it's a binding legal decision to qualify or not on the membership list. It's your law. It's not an internal policy. Your membership code is a law. The same way your election code is also a law. So it is, the federal court has jurisdiction to hear judicial review if you disagree with the decision. For the same reason that even if the council would allow somebody to be a member, somebody who does not agree could also have a judicial review to say that person should not be on the list. So it works both ways. You can go to the next slide. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that slide because, again, Michael is going to talk about it, but here, as I explained, the original members until 1999 are already on the list. Those are on the list. They don't need to apply. And those, right now, would have been the only ones technically entitled to the PCD. Because the PCD is reserved to the members, not the Indians on the ISK list. So right now, technically, only the members would have been entitled to the per capita distribution. But it didn't happen that way, and we're gonna explain how. Then, the category 2 is everybody that needs to apply to get members if you're not already on category 1A. 1. So anyone who was alive between September 9th and January 18th, 2024. Why? There was a cutoff date decided, as you know, of January 9th, which is the anniversary of the Robinson-Huron Treaty. So the 21 First Nations gathered at one point and decided it would be the cutoff date, September 9th. However, in the settlement, there's another date that was decided, January 18, 2024, which is the date of the release to Canada and Ontario on the settlement. Why is it relevant, the date of the release? Is that the $10 billion in the settlement covers the past, whatever is before January 10, 2024. Anything after that date is that new case regarding what you will be entitled to receive annually as an annuity moving forward. So that's why January 10 is a very important date. And all the communities who chose September 9th, initially thinking, hey, it's the anniversary, we have a consensus, we advise council that this date is arbitrary. Because even if you chose the anniversary of the treaty, it's a great idea and it was a consensus, doesn't mean that it was the right date. And we advise council that the right date would rather be that date where the release applies, and we draw the line between the past, present, and future. So there is implication, and that's why we added between September 9 and January 18, if you're alive, either not dead or born, between those dates, you're entitled to receive the payment if you are a member, or if you are entitled to become a member. Okay? The second criteria, you submit a membership application before April 30th, 2025. Why that date? We advise that giving a 6 months notice to all the potential applicants is sufficient time to apply for the membership. And why do we put a date? Well, there are two important questions for you guys regarding a per capita distribution. There's two elements of information that is completely relevant before we can distribute money to you. One, how much money is there to split, and between how many people. So, as long as we don't have the total potential applicants, which is the maximum of how many pieces of pie we have to divide, we don't know. We simply don't know. Then there's no way to know. And for the money, since there's a future date, we don't know how much interest it will generate. If you look at Matt's number, within a matter of few weeks, you made $1 million interest. So in 6 months, the money that's left, and the one that was just added for the second payment, it will generate interest. So only by April 30th will we know total. So the capital that Matt showed you for KPMG, how much is in there, and then we'll know in 6 months how much interest will be there. And keep in mind, maybe, I don't know if Matt gave the information, but there will not be any payment issued until that April 30th date. So even people who did not receive it yet, still waiting for the first payment, they're going to have to be patient and wait for that April 30th, because we need to know the total of you. And the total we're going to have doesn't mean that automatically all those people are going to qualify for members, because we still have to run through the application, and in the the membership code, there's a clause in there that even if your application is received, you have to spend a year in probation in order to be fully member. So some of you who apply, even if you receive a letter one day saying, okay, congratulations, you're now a member of the community, but you are under probation for a year. So because during the probation, there's a risk that you can choose the membership, lose the membership during the probation. It's like a job, right? During probation, you can lose the job. Well, you can lose membership during that 1 year. So during that time, you're going to have to wait patiently for either a first payment, if you never received one and you're now a member, or a potential second payment if there's going to be such a thing. So, April 30th is the date that, and I'm sure the day after May 1st, is it going to be May 1st? Yeah. There's going to be some kind of an announcement, a notice from Chief and Council, because a lot of people are going to be waiting. Because on that date, we'll know precisely not how many members, how many applicants, which is the maximum, okay? And we're going to know how much money with interest is left. Understanding that there's not going to be any more payment issued until then. We'll have those two totals. So any of you, at that point on, with a little calculator on your iPhones or whatever, will be able to divide the money that you're going to receive the information with the number of applicants, and you'll have a rough idea on, first of all, how much money still needs to be distributed to those people who applied who did not receive the first payment. Because it's possible that because they were not on the ISK list, which is the one who received the payment, the first payment of $220,000. If they were not on that list, they did not receive the first payment. So first we have to know the maximum potential individual who could receive the first payment. So we're going to subtract that from the total with the interest. If there's money left, then it will be distributed among all the members, including the applicants, for a way of calculation, for a second payment. And hear me here, we're not going to give money to applicants, but we're going to have the actual potential maximum amount that could eventually lead to a disbursement. Once we have all the application done, then we'll know exactly the amount. Because we'll have rejected some of the applicants who do not qualify. They will not receive a PCD, those who don't qualify. So eventually, one day, I cannot tell you when, it's when all the application will have run through the judicial review. One day, we will have the actual amount of people who will be on the membership list. And from there, if there's money left, because all that money that we kept for in case everybody qualifies, as we disqualify, there will be money left. And potentially, if there's enough money left, there could be a third payment to all those who will, at the end, be on that membership list. That is the plan, to make sure that only members of Thessalon will receive the per capita distribution at the end of the day. So on the fact that the first payment was given to all those who were on the ISK list, we simply considered at this time that they could be entitled to membership. And if we only apply those who were on the initial list of 140, then there would have been a great amount of people who would have not received the payment, or even worse. The council could have considered that only the 140 people on the list are entitled to the PCD. So there could have been a great amount of money divided among 140 people. But if they would have done that, that would have been a great liability, because all those who think who can be member, then the account is at zero. This is a major class action against the bank. And that's why they had to receive advice to make sure that scenario doesn't happen. Because that scenario could not happen. That the bank says, hey, we only have 140 members. We're going to divide all those hundreds of millions into 140, and that's it. We close the books. That would have been probably the worst decision. And that's a decision Chief and Council did not take. But at the same time, telling 1,100 people that you did not apply to the membership, and now you have to apply. In the meantime, you're not receiving money, would have brought another negative situation to a certain extent. Because then you would have to wait years before you can get your PCD. And the compromise that was done between only paying 140 existing members or making everybody else wait, there too, there was a breach of fiduciary duty, because you're not applying equality to members and those entitled to be members, which have the same rights. It's just that we don't know who they are. So the compromise was to make the first payment to all those on the ISK list, even though there could be at the end a situation where some of them don't qualify as members. And we'll only be able to tell once the application process is completed. And there's no way of knowing before that, because there's no criteria that we could already reach a conclusion that some people on the list do not qualify as members. There's no way of knowing that at this time. So the process has been initiated. There's a team of people every day looking at the applications, and they're going to make their decision. And again, Michael's going to go through that process. Another thing too, in the qualification, there's not going to be a double payment. So let's say the person was not on the membership list, got his $220,000. If he becomes a member, he's not entitled to another 220. He already got it. And if your membership was another First Nation among the 21 Robinson Huron First Nations, you're not entitled to a payment. Even if you say, hold on, I was a Garden River member, I only got 100,000, so I'm transferring my band and I'm entitled to another 120. No. So if you got paid by a band at the time of the distribution, you don't have a residual right to have the difference. Doesn't work that way. So just let's make it clear that those who think, hey, that could be a sweet deal, you're going to be disappointed. So this approach, simply to ensure that the council is applying its duty. And, you know, I'm not a member of Thessalon. I'm not going to say if council is a good council or a bad council. I'm not there. But what I can tell you, though, is since we received the mandate to advise them, they followed our advice. Every single advice we gave them to go back on the right track, they followed. I can certify that. We drafted a decision on the April 30th on the application, the dates, everything they agreed. So this council, right now, I cannot tell about what they're going to do tomorrow morning, next week, next month. But at this time, tonight, they are respecting their duty of fiduciary obligation towards the membership by the actions that they've done so far and that they're continuing doing. You know, and you can ask me all the questions you want to be more precise because it's a big statement. But again, I'm not saying that the council is the best council in the world. I'm saying, no offense, I'm saying that since we are advising them as lawyers specialized in the area of fiduciary duty, they are by the book. I can certify that. You can go to the next slide. You're probably getting tired of hearing me, so we have to hurry a bit. So, this is how the money was divided for the 21 First Nations of Robinson Huron. $10 million, 55% of the $10 million was divided among the 21 First Nation population. Okay, 55%. 39% equal distribution among all the First Nations. So more or less 40%, which means $4 billion, were distributed equally among the 21, regardless of population. So that benefits a smaller community such as Thessalon. And 55% is based on population. And we can go straight to the next slide to see what it looks like. If you can roll that one. Yeah. So you see the total of 39,221 beneficiaries of the treaty per population. You see Thessalon, 1,118, 3% of the total. So you got, the division that you got is a split between 3% of the 55% and a division of 1 out of 21 of the 40%. This is how the piece of the pie was divided. Now there's a good thing, I don't know if you're noticing. Look at the number 1,118. The people who divided the money could have used the membership list. This could have been 140 instead of 1,118. But the people above that manages the settlement and transfer the money said, you know what? There's some communities who are good with their membership code and they're up to date with their numbers, but they acknowledge that some communities maybe were not that accurate, such as Thessalon. But you're not the only one, others. So they said, to be fair, we're not going to use membership codes. We're going to use the ISK list for the distribution. And you know what? It's at your advantage. Because this could have been 140. And you could have got a lot less in the division. So the part where you say not fair, we distributed among 1,118 of us, and some of them maybe they're not members, you got greatly compensated from that number at the end of the day. Right? So it's a good balance at the end of the day. Maybe more people got the 220,000 than they should have, but you got a lot more to bargain for because they could have applied the membership. Because only the members of the First Nation are entitled to that money. So I think there's a happy ending here because you got more money and there are chances that you will get more. Although nobody here tonight can tell you for sure you're going to get a second payment. You know why? Again, we don't have the number of April 30th yet, so we don't know. Maybe there's just going to be enough to cover the first payment of $220,000. I have a hard time to say it. Maybe. But you have to be patient and wait for that date to have certainty on the payment. But one thing is for sure, you will get payment based on membership at the end of the day. Nobody will be treated differently. Nobody will receive another amount. And the challenge for the First Nation, which is you collectively, is to hope and pray that there's enough money to cover $220,000 per individual when we're going to have the final numbers. Right? So that's something that we cannot even have a guarantee at this time that there's going to be enough. And if there's none, there's going to be a major problem for everybody because it's your collective money. Maybe people who will not receive the payment will say, well, we're not being treated equally here, so we're going to sue and we're going to get our money. How? Good luck. Maybe there's all source revenue, maybe you have money somewhere that one day you'll find, we'll see. There's other claims, right? I'm negotiating a claim, maybe by that time we'll receive the compensation from the boundary claim, who knows? But in the meantime, it's huge liability. So we're really hoping, and I'm sure the council is pretty nervous about it, because nobody knows. Matt doesn't know as the financial director, the ED doesn't know, the chief doesn't know, I don't know, nobody knows. Until we have the final numbers by April 30th. That's about it. Questions? Comments?
It's all reserved